This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with another Wolff Responds. I want to respond to the spectacle many of us watched some time ago when two billionaires, Richard Branson and Jeffrey Bezos, amused themselves by spending fortunes of money competing to see who could get into space first, spend a little time up there and come back and giggle about it all, including the vast amounts of money spent. At a time when the world is battling a virus that threatens us all, at a time when economies are struggling to recover from the awful 15 months we've just gone through, using money for this kind of amusement for the super rich, money that is therefore not available to take care of the most urgent social problems we could possibly have, struck everyone for the obscene spectacle that it was. However, I would like to talk to you about it because of its exemplification of a much more general problem. And this has to do with the justification for extreme wealth. And in the case of Jeffrey Bezos, for example, but I could choose any of the billionaires virtually in the world right now, in their case, mostly here's what it is. And I'm going to use a metaphor. Imagine a relay race from a mile away to here. And each of the racers in turn runs 1/10 of that mile distance. And then he or she hands off the baton to the next runner. And in that way, every 1/10 of a mile is given its best shot by a fresh runner. It is a particularly fast way for people running to get a baton across a 1-mile distance. And suppose there were a contest of who could do it fastest, and let's say somebody won, where there were 10 people who ran the fastest when you average them out compared to all the others, and so they won the prize. And let's say the prize was $10,000. And now suppose the donor, whoever gave the money for the contest, came up to the podium and handled the last of the 10 relay racers the $10,000, shook his or her hand, and said, "Thank you." Everybody went home. The 9 runners who ran as fast as they could, and who were, each of them, crucial to winning the race, took home nothing. The one who came last, who happened to be the last of the 10, and so was standing there when the donor gave out the money, he got it all. If you saw that, you would understand the grotesque injustice of it all. Those other 9 runners were just as important. Had they stumbled, had they fallen, had they run too slowly, the thing would have been lost. The prize money shouldn't go just to the last runner. Well, now, what's the metaphor? That's Jeffrey Bezos. Here's what he is: the last in a long line of people who invented, who developed important components of what Amazon is, namely a rapid delivery service. Mr. Bezos used all kinds of inventions and ideas: computers, internet, telecommunications, earlier developments of certain materials and how you could use them, and how that could speed up the movement of electricity through metal wires, and 100,000 other things. Jeffrey Bezos and people around him were the beneficiary of theories of industrial management. There are whole courses of industrial management, and those were made available, the learning of thousands of other companies through trial and error. This works, this doesn't. Mr. Bezos is the last one in a very long relay race. He gets the billions at the end, and all of the others don't. And the injustice, the sheer absurdity of this way of dealing with the issue should be obvious. Let me describe to you some of the people along the way who did stuff that Mr. Bezos absolutely relied on, just like the speed of the last runner in a relay race depends, in terms of the covering of the whole mile, on what all the others did. There were professors in universities who developed understandings of electronics, of telecommunications, of computers, of the internet. Lots of university professors who made important discoveries along the way that Mr. Bezos used, just like the last runner used the speed of the earlier runners to help win the race. Then there were the government agencies, supported by our tax money, who made crucial contributions to modern telecommunications, modern computers. The whole work of modern technology was contributed to by countless thousands who get none of the billions that Mr. Bezos gets, because he's just at the end of a long line, like that last relay runner. Why are we paying it all to him? Then there's the argument that people like Bezos used, that I wouldn't have worked very hard if I didn't get an incentive. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's suppose there aren't people who love to figure things out for the sheer joy of it, even though you and I know they're there. Lots of them. People who embody that age-old human quality of trying to figure out a better mousetrap, a better way to do things, a faster way to get things done, and so on. Let's assume, however, we have to give incentives. And I'm going to use an example from my profession. I'm a professor of economics. I write articles. I try to write articles that are useful and valuable, that will interest my fellow economists, that might interest students who could help learn the material by reading my work. Do I have an incentive? I sure do. I want to be loved by my students. I want to be admired. I want my writings to be read. Those are all very important things to me, don't have much to do with money. But let's go further and give Mr. Bezos the benefit of another doubt, that money is crucial. Well, we have that in my profession. We have a Nobel Prize in economics, arguably the #1 prize in our subject. Every year, one or more people are chosen as somehow having made the most important and useful contribution to economics and to all the people who use economics, all the corporate leaders, all the business communities, all the government advisors and policymakers. And you know what we get if you win the Nobel Prize? Lots of recognition, no money, and then a bit of money, about $1 million. Not like Mr. Bezos, 200 billion, but $1 million. And you know, lots of economists work very hard. They have an enormous incentive, but they don't have to take away huge wealth that could solve social problems. The incentive can be modest, and it will have just as much of a pull on those who are responsive to monetary incentive as would have happened with Mr. Bezos's case. You know, most inventions are made by people who can't possibly know in advance how much money it could ultimately help to make. But they have an incentive anyway. It's purely a fake excuse for being a billionaire, for having the wealth that you can withhold from the rest of the community of which you are a part and which developed everything you used to make whatever breakthrough you did. It's selfish, it's ugly, and it's unjust. And those are perfectly good words to describe the very existence of billionaires like Mr. Bezos, who came up in a system that rewards them when it really shouldn't. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.